Are you concerned about the homeless? Are you concerned about the immigrants? Are you concerned that we have people living outdoors in the cold while buildings all over cities remain empty? Well, today we want to share with you a possible solution. We'll talk about it today, and we want you to call in 515 605 9325 and give your opinion about the cooperative housing agreement proposed right here on the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. And we're looking forward to having you give your input about this very important proposal as we take a look at ways we can work together to end this crisis. We'll be right back in just a moment.
In Ghana, Akwaba. In Nigeria, Peleo. In South Africa, Salbona. In Senegal, Langadek. In Kenya, Jambo. In Israel, Shalom. In Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia, Assalamu alaikum. Greetings, and may peace be upon you all.
And Grand Rising. Thank you all for joining us on this Wednesday edition of the Female Solution Radio Show. And we'll be right back as we connect with our co-host, Kareem Hamid. And later on, we'll be joined by guests to talk about this very critical issue facing our nation today, the homeless crisis. We've compounded it by bringing people who don't speak the predominant language of English to economically distressed cities. And they have no place to go. So we've added to the homeless crisis. But today we want to talk about a solution, and we're going to be right back after these brief messages. So we invite you to call in 515-605-9325 and press 1 when you're ready to add your voice to this conversation. Today, we're going to present a proposed solution and see if you think it is feasible, and maybe you might even think of ways that you can participate. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
The Female Solution Global Radio TV show invites you to an invigorating conversation with our team of hosts Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. Start your week with Monday Morning Mindfulness with Zelda Speaks. Tuesdays, Self-Cell Care with Jody Susan. Wednesdays, Repairing Broken Families with Naima Latif and co-host Kareem Hamid. Thursdays, Soulful Solutions with Dr. Debbie Green. And Fridays, Health and Wellbeing with Beata. Saturdays, tune in 12 noon to 2 p.m. Central Time. First Saturday, Success Strategies with Jana. Second Saturday, Wendy Williams Esquire on relationships. Third Saturday, Move Around with Deborah. And fourth Saturday, Wisdom with Mama D. Join us Sundays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Time for Soul Purpose Healing with Beata. Call in and comment 515-605-9325. Press 1 to speak to the host and be a part of the solution.
I'm Barbara Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
And in case you didn't notice the resemblance, we're also three sisters.
We're going to be coming to you every week, sharing our successes and our mistakes as we navigate our lives as moms, wives, sisters, daughters, and of course, Black women in today's world.
We'll talk about it all: race, politics, religion, economics, culture, and we'll take a look at everything from whether or not to use corporal punishment to how do you teach your children about sex.
Look for our upcoming book, Growing Up Charles. It's a personal story about our lives growing up in Maple Park on Chicago's South Side. I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms. Follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Three Black Moms. Hi, I'm Naima Latif, and if you're watching this, that means you're one of the 4.6 billion people from around the world who are using an electronic device to talk to people. In these times, people are using the internet to talk to everybody. Friends, neighbors, family members, co-workers. People are on their cell phones and computers all day long. Now, if you're in business, that is great news. That means you can sell your products and services all day long and never have to leave your home. All you need is a media connection, somebody to connect you to an audience. And that's why I'm talking to you today. We produce programs, and our audience members are people who shop. They buy clothes, food, beauty supplies, cleaning supplies, home repair, transportation services, child care services. Whatever you're selling, they need to buy it. We're your media connection. Just follow this link, and tomorrow you can sit back and relax at home while your business is making you money.
And we are back. You're listening to and watching the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif, and we'll be joined with our co-host, Kareem Hamid, and our American Muslim 360 family. And we invite you to call in 515-605-9325 and press 1 when you're ready to speak. And we will certainly add you to this conversation. This is a cooperative effort today because we have a problem and we can only solve it together. And now, let us see if we can bring in our co-host. Yes, Kareem Hamid.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Naima Latif, and I extend the greetings to the Female Solution family.
Wa alaikum salam. We,
this morning.
oh yes, we are so grateful to be with you and the listening audience around the world, and certainly we're excited about today's show because we're here to present a solution to a problem. And this is what we do. There are a number of cities that are facing this crisis of homelessness. And we know that there are a number of property owners that are sitting on empty apartments, even some whole buildings. And the question is, well, how do we put the two together? Well, there are a lot of issues to be addressed. And one of them, of course, is the trust factor that people have of those who are homeless and living on the streets. The common belief may be that people are mentally ill. But what about if people just don't have a place to stay because they don't have money? And a lot of times that's really all it is. So, how do we put together those who need a place to stay, those who have a place to stay, and those who would possibly finance the stay of people while they are seeking financial means? Well, I've been made aware that there are organizations that will pay the the rent for a person who is currently homeless for 1 year and give them a chance to find some type of financial means to support themselves. Catholic Charities does this, one of the organizations. And I believe there are many more that would be willing to help financially a person get on their feet. But even in the wake of that, what if we simply, using an honor system and a written agreement, for those building owners that are willing, what if we simply had them to house those who are homeless, and those who are homeless agree to live cooperatively, meaning that they would agree to participate in taking turns in the maintenance and upkeep of the building in exchange for their free rent. And we can bring in agencies that would assist in, on a weekly basis, providing whatever support services they needed: counseling, job preparation, even those who may need some level of emotional support, therapy. Not people who are dangerously mentally ill, but those who may have depression issues that may even lead to drug and alcohol use. But certainly to begin the process of giving people back their humanity. Now, today we're going to bring on some guests, one of whom has a building and has housed people. And there are issues that arise, and we're going to talk about that. And another who has lived in a cooperative living environment and has an upcoming book that talks about that experience and some of the challenges, even when all have agreed to operate according to a certain set of spiritual guidelines. We still have the human element, and we'll talk about that. And then we'll introduce a document that we will be presenting to our elected officials, starting out with the aldermen, to have them consider. And then we'll bring in other elements to the situation. What are all of the legal issues, insurance issues, building code issues? Yes, there may be some things that have to be considered. But right now in Chicago, the temperatures have reached the freezing level. The temperatures in the 30s. People are still living outdoors, and this is inhumane when we have many, many empty apartment buildings across the city. Intelligence would motivate us to figure this out. So today we want to present a possible solution to this crisis, and we're going to go step by step on this document that we believe can answer the questions and be a solution to this crisis. So that's our conversation today. And of course, we invite our listeners and viewers to call in 515-605-9325 and press 1 when you're ready to speak, and we will gladly get your comments. And we're going to pull up the document on the screen for those who are viewing, but I want to go over a few points and get your comments. And after the 7:30 break, we'll be joined by our guests. And this is called the Cooperative Housing Agreement. And basically, it is like a contract. And it starts out with, I and in the name and the social security number, because many homeless people don't have an address, so their name and their social security number. Agree to adhere to the following rules and regulations as a resident under the Cooperative Housing Agreement as issued for the building located at and in the address and owned by and in the name of the owner. So I'm going to go over the first two things, and then we'll talk about this. There are a list of 15 rules and regulations, but I'm going to just go over the first two, and then we'll talk about that before the break. One, I shall occupy apartment number, blank apartment number, in the above stated building, and shall maintain cleanliness and order in the apartment for the duration of this agreement, which shall extend from, the date and to the date, unless otherwise terminated for non-compliance with rules and regulations stated herein. Number two, I shall behave in a respectful and considerate manner toward all residents of the above stated building, and shall engage in no behaviors that create conflict with or disturbance of any resident. Now that's just the first two things. Well, let me go on and read the first five. Number three, I shall keep the sound of all music, loud conversation, or sounds from electronic devices within the walls of the apartment I occupy. Number four, I shall house no large or dangerous animals and shall be responsible for the removal of any dirt or debris created by any small animals under my care. Number five, I shall participate in the collective maintenance of the building by performing basic cleaning duties of the general areas as outlined by the building owner and according to an agreed upon schedule by the building owner and tenants. Now that's just the first five. There are 10 more. But I want to first introduce that and then talk about some of the issues that arise when you're asking adults to agree to something and work in a group, particularly with people that they do not know. So how do we, first of all, deal with people who may not have been in a structured environment for a while? And what are some of the challenges initially that you see would need to be addressed? So, Brother Kareem, I'll give you the floor. And what are your first thoughts?
First off, let me extend the greeting to everyone that's listening to this broadcast of Assalamu Alaikum. Peace be unto you and upon us all. This is an ongoing problem that is growing. Homelessness. We are approaching winter months, and that can be very life-threatening for those without shelter. To provide temporary or permanent housing is a very laudable effort. You mentioned landlords that own large buildings, that own buildings that are vacant. The incentive, to me, I think we should give an incentive to the property owner. And I think that incentive should be to forgive their property taxes for the duration of this agreement.
That's a good idea.
That incentivizes, right? That incentivizes the property owner to at least look at the program and eventually take part in it. I'm putting myself in the position of a landlord that owns property, and the landlord's concern is the maintenance of his property. Will it be vandalized? Well, if the city vacant at this time, the chances of it being vandalized is great because it's vacant. There's no one occupying it.
Yes.
And if there are people that are called squatters.
Yes.
They don't mean any harm, but they're just seeking shelter.
Trying to get out of the cold.
When they enter the vacant building, right, trying to get out of the weather. But if this can be an organized, concerted, intelligent effort that offers shelter to some people are chronically homeless.
Yes.
It takes a lot to reestablish yourself. When we see homeless people carrying bags with them, those bags just don't contain clothing and stuff. In a lot of cases, it is important documents that we'll need.
Yes.
So, and to assist those that seek to take advantage of this program in obtaining documents that they may not have. But also very important, there has to be a screening process. There has to be a screening process so that elements that are not socially educated and how to live with others in peace. Then we need to screen those that would apply for this program. I think it is one that, especially with children outside. There are homeless people that have children. There are husbands and wives that have not left each other. They are living homeless as a couple. And at one time, let me say this, I heard this, and guy say he was homeless. He said, people look at me with a very disgusting look, as if I chose this for myself. But no, this is what has happened to me. After this pandemic and the mortgage forgiveness, the shutting down of businesses, that curtailed employment to a great degree. And some businesses did not reopen. That left a lot of unemployed people. But so I'm just stating that we shouldn't look at the homeless as if they chose this for themselves. A lot of them did not. This is something that has happened to them. So, and we have a lot of vacant buildings and absent landlords. And whether they keep up with their taxes or not, I believe the forgiveness of personal property taxes would be an incentive for them to educate themselves concerning this program and assist in developing a place for the homeless to habitate, to actually live in. I think it's a crime to have shelter and you don't offer shelter to the shelterless.
Absolutely.
But most homes, right? But we have to understand, most property owners, especially with those that own large properties like apartment buildings, warehouses, that for real, that is a financial investment.
Yes.
That is a financial investment. So the incentive is for them is the forgiveness of personal property, of property taxes. over a number of years. That's my take on it, inshallah. So we hope that to hear more concerning this program and see how it can be organized and actuated in real time. So
Yes.
winter is upon us now.
Yes, winter is upon us.
So that's about it. Yeah.
But I think that's some excellent points. I think some excellent points that you made, and I certainly think that's an excellent idea of giving incentive to property owners by giving their taxes, because that's one of the biggest costs that they have, and also some type of screening process for those who are entering, because that's another concern. How do you know the mental state of people? There has to be some type of evaluation to make sure that the person is safe. And I think there was another point that you raised about that. Well, of course, one of the biggest questions that people have are, how do you make sure that the buildings don't get vandalized and things like that? And as you pointed out, when they're empty, they're more likely to be vandalized. So having occupants would actually be a benefit, but those occupants must also be people who would not vandalize the property. So this is part of that agreement. So I'm going to go through the next 5 before we take a break, and we'll talk about that. Number 6, I shall consume no alcoholic beverage nor indulge in any mind-altering or illegal substances while on the premises. Number 7, I shall harbor no firearms on the premises, nor use any items as a weapon, nor shall I engage in any acts of aggression or threat of bodily harm to any resident or any individual on the premises. Number 8, I shall not solicit nor engage in the sale or trade of any illegal substances. Number 9, I shall actively engage in seeking employment sufficient to pay the regular rental fee of the above stated apartment, which would be however many dollars per month, due on the date of, and then that date inserted, 1 day after the ending date of this agreement. And number 10, I shall house no other individuals in the above stated apartment other than those listed in this document as children of minor age legally under my care, who shall be as follows, and then name, age, sex of the person. So those are the next 5 issues. And of course, that also addresses the fact that this is a 1-year agreement during which they will be actively seeking employment, and after 1 year, that next month rent is due. So this is a way, and there are currently programs that offer this, and generally, if people are of sound mind and have the support that they need, if they can be in a place that's stable for a while, it's a lot easier to get a job than if you're living on the street and not able to wash yourself or anything, and then trying to get employment. Homelessness in itself becomes a trap that you can't get out of, because the things you need in order to get employment, you don't have. Number 1 being an address, and number 2 being a place to maintain yourself. So the cycle of homelessness is it's self-repeating, because you can't get out of the cycle until you can get into a place, and you can't get into a place until you have money. So if we remove that as the barrier, then perhaps we can help people who are of sound mind, basically, to actually start their lives over. So we're going to take a break and come back and talk to our guests and go over the last items on this document. We'll pull up on screen for those of you who are watching, and we want you to call in 515-605-9325 or 515-605-9891 and press 1 when you're ready to add your voice and your suggestions on how we can end this homeless and immigrant crisis. We'll be right back after this quick break, so stick and stay. Don't stray away. We'll be back in a moment, so stay with us.
Hi, I'm Naima Latif, and if you're watching this, that means you're one of the 4.6 billion people from around the world who are using an electronic device to talk to people. In these times, people are using the internet to talk to everybody. Friends, neighbors, family members, co-workers. People are on their cell phones and computers all day long. Now, if you're in business, that is great news. That means you can sell your products and services all day long and never have to leave your home. All you need is a media connection, somebody to connect you to an audience. And that's why I'm talking to you today. We produce programs, and our audience members are people who shop. They buy clothes, food, beauty supplies, cleaning supplies, home repair, transportation services, child care services. Whatever you're selling, they need to buy it. We're your media connection. Just follow this link, and tomorrow you can sit back and relax at home while your business is making you money.
Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black moms.
And in case you didn't notice the resemblance, we're also 3 sisters.
We're going to be coming to you every week, sharing our successes and our mistakes as we navigate our lives as moms, wives, sisters, daughters, and of course, Black women in today's world.
We'll talk about it all: race, politics, religion, economics, culture, and we'll take a look at everything from whether or not to use corporal punishment to how do you teach your children about sex.
Look for our upcoming book, Growing Up Charles. It's a personal story about our lives growing up in Maple Park on Chicago's South Side. I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black moms. Follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, 3 Black Moms.
And we are back. You're listening to and watching the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif, along with our co-host, Kareem Hamid, and our American Muslim 360 family. And we want to hear from you. Give us a call, 515-605-9325, and press 1 when you're ready to speak, because we want your comments. Got to put on my second set of eyes here, because we're going to go over this document. And this is a proposed solution to the crisis that we're facing with the current homeless, as well as the immigrants who have recently arrived to many of the economically distressed cities of the nation. And so, for those of you who have just joined us, this is entitled the Cooperative Housing Agreement, and it is intended to provide a means whereby those who are homeless can receive free housing for 1 year and support services that they need, and give those who are in need of stability a chance to find employment. So we're going to go over the last 5 points before we bring in our first guest, and then we're going to go over the whole thing. But certainly, we want you all to call in 515-605-9325 and press 1, because we're going to be sending this show to elected officials along with this document and explaining that this is a proposal which, if building owners are willing, and we're going to add some of the suggestions that are made here. Of course, Kareem made an excellent suggestion about the tax forgiveness. But we also want to include all of you who have ideas, because ultimately we can collectively solve this problem. So, number 11, I shall attend weekly self-development classes as provided by the building owner who has contracted with community and faith-based organizations to provide emotional support, counseling, language classes, professional skills training, and motivational presentations. Number 12, I shall attend monthly tenant meetings conducted by the building owner or building manager as duly appointed by the building owner to receive updates on employment opportunities, to share concerns, and offer suggestions for the well-being of the tenants. Number 13, I shall take proper care of all building facilities and shall immediately notify the building owner by phone and in writing of any defects in or malfunctions as soon as detected, to allow the building owner to arrange for repairs in a timely manner. Number 14, I shall notify the building owner by phone and in writing if I am terminating this agreement in order to move to another location, and shall leave the premises empty of all my possessions and completely clean with no damage to walls, floors, or appliances. And number 15, I understand that failure to comply with any of the above stated rules and regulations as outlined can result in the immediate termination of this agreement, at which time my possessions may be removed by the building owner, and I and all occupants under my care may be relocated to a police facility. A police facility. Now, right now, the immigrants are living in police facilities, but that can be, if you act up, you could be arrested. But we'll talk about that. But we're gonna pull up the document on screen, and we're going to again go over each of the 15 points and discuss also what kind of agreement, what kind of incentives, as Kareem suggested, it's and not only incentives, but also agreements that a property owner would need to make to be a part of this process. But we'll talk about that. First, I want to, of course, introduce, for those who have not yet met, our dear friend we're going to be seeing a whole lot more of her, but she is owner of property. She's a businesswoman, has worked in various fields that gives her insight about finance as well as property ownership and management, and has even had one of her properties house people who needed emergency assistance. So there are some issues we need to address. But first of all, we must have compassion when working with those who need help. And that has to be our first motivation. So let us welcome to the show my dear sister, Zoe Ma. Thank you so much for joining us today on The Female Solution. Oh, okay. Oh, can't hear you. Let's make sure we get our audio on. Okay. Can't hear you yet. Yeah, can't hear you yet. We're going to see if we can make sure we're unmuted on all your devices. And while we're working with her sound, Kareem, you want to give us some feedback on some of the points that you heard?
Yes. It's a lengthy agreement, but what has been written, it somewhat assures safety and security for the occupant and the property owner. That part where it says, I shall not consume alcohol or drugs. How, my question is, how can that be
enforced? Well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, we bring baggage with us wherever we're at. There we are. So that it makes sense to not want alcoholic beverages affecting the resident, but that's something that will really need. How do you maintain that? How do you police that? How do you police that? Although it is a concern, but which is a very good point. And the firearms and weapons. We know there is a right to carry now, and a lot of people, for their own protection, are obtaining firearms. I don't know if the homeless is in that group, but many of them, they already have firearms. They may have had firearms before they became homeless. So that's another, concern that I have, because we are seeing that homeless people are being assaulted. The homeless are being, in some cases, just shot and killed. Just for the sport of it, just for the sport of it. So the homeless do need protection from violence and assault. And if they are accepted into this program, and they are occupying a dwelling or a large apartment complex, I would strongly suggest, and I don't know who would fund it, but I believe there needs to be a level of security placed over that dwelling and its occupants, because they would be sitting ducks for any that had a negative intent on the residents. Safety and security is very important. So, my question is, how would the security be financed? That's very, because there are women, children, there's the elderly, there are those that have physical impairment. We don't want to create a situation whereby they are targeted by the criminal element that's in every city, every town, every habitat. So my concern is also the safety and security of the occupants that are accepted as residents in these dwellings. That's another concern of mine, which I hope to hear from Zoe Ma, as to how she will address that. It's a laudable idea, but we have to recognize with every idea we have, what usually shuts the idea down is when in the meeting you ask, well, how will we finance that? Then everybody falls silent. So we must come up with a mechanism. Yeah.
And that's why we end up at an impasse, and that's why we have this problem, because everything has stopped and the crisis is continuing. So those are very important points that you have raised, and of course our Monday morning host Zelda, her brother, who during a time he was homeless, was shot and killed. He was murdered. And so that spearheaded her to be a very strong activist in helping the homeless, as well as an advocate for the homeless. But that is an issue, the security, the safety, and the fact that people do get assaulted. But now the other issue is if you're in a place with your family, your children, yourself, you want to feel safe and not feel that another tenant could assault you. So these buildings must be safe places. Now you can't govern what people do outside the building, and of course people are free to go. This is not prison. They're free to do whatever they want to do outside, even as far as drinking. But if there's to be no alcohol on the premises, then that's something that they would need to comply with. And you say, how do you police that? And that's also another question. How do you let people live without feeling like they're being over policed or treated like they're in prison just simply because they don't have money? We tend to do that. And there are shelters that allow people temporary overnight housing, but there are very strict rules. And sometimes it's almost prison like, where you got curfews where you got to be in at a certain time. And we're not suggesting that. We're not suggesting that people be treated any differently than if they were a paying renter, except for these agreements because they're not paying rent. So in exchange for not paying rent, there has to be some level of safety that they agree to comply with, simply because other people have to trust that they are not going to be dangerous, and the environment itself has to be a place of safety. Now, if you drink somewhere else and you come back in drunk and acting ignorant, you can be put out. So the non-alcohol policy is to at least help those who need to stay sober, to more support their sobriety so that they don't end up acting out of character when they're out of their minds as a result of alcohol or drug consumption, and then ending up losing their housing privileges. But you can't keep people from drinking outside the building. They just, if they, and again, the policing issue, how do you enforce these things without security? And if you're going to have security, you have to pay them. So then how do you bring in an element of people that will be willing to finance this? And one of the things that thought about is the fact that Catholic Charities does finance. It's a program where you can get a housing taken care of or subsidized for 1 year, and then after that you need to pay the regular fee. But they will help you, and I'm sure there's a screening process with those people that are in that program. So perhaps the next step is to look at organizations that might be willing to finance this effort. So we're going to bring this document on screen and bring in our guest, Zoe, to talk about some of these things that you've raised, which are definitely valid things to consider, especially because we have to find a way to work as private citizens to create a solution, even if the government does nothing. So first, let me bring in our guest and then talk about some of the issues that you've raised. And again, let us welcome Zoe Ma. Okay, can we hear you now?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now. Wonderful, wonderful.
Hey, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be on this show and discuss this issue because is dear to me. And I think with my background, I probably can have some suggestion that it really outside the box because my unique experience and background.
Yes.
And then, I think, maybe I can give you the audience here some information about my background
Yes.
and as far as the housing goes on that point, and then why I have a different idea about this. So I came from China. I grew up in China and came to the United States when I was 25-year old. But my first experience with housing on my own was when I graduated from college and I got a job away from in a city away from my parents, that I need a housing when I start working in a different city. So here's my unique perspective. How, in 30 years ago when China was poor, how they solved the housing problem. See, in China never, well, I can't say never have a homeless issue. China had a homeless issue before, but it's different than the one in the United States. But there's some structures, things that China have a solution that is not available to the United States. But there is a concept that it can be implemented in the United States. And I think I might give you an alternative to a solution that maybe, I don't know about the United States, but just for the city of Chicago can probably try to implement.
Yes.
Which is when I first got my job in a different city as a new college grad, there's no way I can have there was no rental housing at that time in China. All the housing was owned by the state or by farmers. So in China, there's two types of ownership. Housing, either you are owned by the farmers, and they have land and they have a house. But in the city, all the housing was owned by the state. So when at that time, housing is it's a employee benefit as much as healthcare. So when I first get my job, in addition to my many healthcare benefit, I also have a housing benefit, which I have a dorm. So at that time, to solve the housing problem in China, for somebody who need housing in the urban environment, urban setting, is the housing is connect with your employment. And so because somebody need to pay for the housing. How to pay is when you work for employer, part of your compensation come in the form of housing. So it's like so what I remember my first housing. I actually, the funny thing is, as a Chinese Muslim, in China, the only probably non-Muslim country has a Muslim privilege policy. So when I got my job with my first employer, the non-Muslim, they share one room, like 4 girls, 4 boys, 4 guys share one room. Of course, it's a bigger room. But I had a SRO, single residence
room occupancy,
because I'm a Muslim. So they gave me the privilege, the Muslim privilege, because being Muslim have a dietary restriction, restriction that they allow me. They actually gave me the, affirmative action in terms of housing. And my SRO, how big is my SRO?
How big was it?
25 square feet.
Just
a size of a little bit bigger than the single bed, the twin bed.
Wow.
But that's sufficient. You just have your room. You have I had a room and a dresser, and that's enough space to put a few of my suitcases. That's all. That was my my first housing on my own for my first 3 years in China.
Wow.
So, but I think, like the gentleman talked about how to finance housing. I think some of the big employers in the United States or in Chicago, to be, just let's talk about Chicago, like Walmart, the big employers, when they hire minimum wage employees, they should provide SROs for the employees to start with. And that way, the young people or whoever, you can be old, you are, as long as you are on minimum wage, there's no way you can afford a decent apartment.
Right.
So that's the very first reason for homeless is the minimum wage jobs.
Right. So now how does that work? So let's say a person is employed by, one of these companies, say a Walmart, who's homeless, and the exchange is Walmart would pay the building owner, and so that would be how they would.
I think so. Because the owner also have a lot of liability. There's a lot of liability to be a rental property owner. And the one issue is, what if that person, property owner sign a lease with the tenant, and the tenants refuse to move out, the owner have to go a lot of legal process to evict that person.
Get them out. Yes.
It's very, very expensive process. And then we don't want to incur that on the that expense, impose that on the shoulder of the property owner when they try to help out the homeless.
Well, that's the other thing, and we'll bring up this document on screen. We don't want a property owner to have to go through that kind of expense to get someone out who already isn't paying rent. So part of this agreement is that you can be terminated instantly. You don't get due process. You don't get.
No. That's a violate American law.
Because the thing about it, if someone is a threat, and it's just like, because I'm aware of a situation at one of the shelters where a woman was threatening someone, and the police came and got them and basically put them out. So if you're arrested, you don't, it's not like, okay, I gotta serve your notice, I gotta do that. If you are accused of doing something that is in violation,
I think in this setting is a little bit different.
Yeah.
In a legal sense, it's if there's a contract as a renter and then a landlord, it's a different law than a shelter.
Yes.
So yeah, I can be put in jail, but if I have belonging in that apartment, it cannot be evicted. So you have to go through a process. I think that part, we need to have a lawyer to look through it. If there's an exemption in this case. And another thing is, because when we sign the legal documents, like a lease, doesn't matter if it's like intent to, whatever it is, if someone claim in the end saying, you know, I'm not mentally capable to sign this, I cannot hold accountable for this lease. So that I think that the if that person have the capacity to sign a lease, so I feel there's a lot of risk on the side of the property owner that we have to address and then minimize the liability issue for the property owner, because I own properties. You know,
Yeah.
I have a property in Wisconsin right now. I think for a couple of years, you know, I don't charge anything because I'm not there to manage. So I have this nonprofit organization, use it to housing unemployed, you know, homeless or people with alcohol issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the manager said, like, you know, right now it's too much for me. Probably I will not deal with people with alcohol issue anymore.
And that's one of the biggest, I guess, liabilities and biggest challenges in this situation is that people who have alcohol issues create problems. And a lot of times the reason why they're homeless is because they have an alcohol issue. So
Yes.
you got to figure out how do we address this? People are homeless largely due to their own difficulties. And if you can help them get rid of the alcohol addiction, or at least keep it under control while they're on that premises, then maybe their behavior will be manageable. So,
So yeah, so that's why I suggest to work with a third party to eliminate the liability of the property owners, to work with another employer, so the employer can tell the tenants, you sign a lease with the employer, that the employer, because they will police that person during the daytime, you need to work for us only when you are sober.
mm-hmm.
Okay, that will actually, in a way, also reduce the continuation of alcoholism or addiction on part of that tenant. If that so because the contract is between the tenants, between the landlord and the employer, and then the housing is a benefit of the employment. So whenever that person cannot be hired due to alcohol addiction or any issue, that contract can be terminated immediately because that person is fired. There's no
Mm-hmm.
contract. There's no contractual right between the tenant and the landlord. My personal suggestion is minimum as much risk as possible, and this agreement can be between the tenant and the employer. That tenant, as part of employment, need to abide by this agreement. And it's the employers who has a lot of financial muscle to deal with any legal issue.
Now that's a thought.
You know, Zoe?
Yes, that's a thought. You know, we got to take a break. We got to take a break, but I want to take your question as soon as we get back, because that's a thought. Especially when I think of a lot of these places that use like maybe day labor, but maybe they could act as the employer that would have this agreement with the building owner. But we'll talk about that when we come back. And first thing we'll come back, we'll take Kareem's response to some of your suggestions. And we'll go over, for those who are just joining us, we'll go over this entire agreement again and get your thoughts. We want you to call in 515-605-9325 and press 1 when you're ready to speak, so that we can get your thoughts. If you want to see it online, you can go to The Female Solution on Facebook or The Female Solution on YouTube. And we're going to keep the document on the screen as we take a commercial break. Give you a chance to read it over and call in with your suggestions because our next step is to put this in motion by adding all those elements that you suggest, taking it to our elected officials, but also taking it to the business community and seeing if we can all work together to end this crisis. So we'll be right back after this quick break. So we want you to stay with us.
We have an opportunity to transform the whole global society in the next 50 years. 50 years from now, the earth will be populated by a new generation of adults, many of whom are yet unborn. Our mission is to nurture them in childhood with love, guidance, and protection, and to raise them in healthy, happy families. If we impart values of compassion, generosity, and respect for fellow human beings in the next generation of children, they will create a world where people can live together in peace. This is our goal. Be a part of the transformation. Get your copy of the book, The Female Solution. Go to www.naimalatif.com. That's www.naimalatif.com. Do you want to live in a world without war? Join our global peace movement. Heavenly Culture World Peace Restoration of Light transcends culture, religion, ideology, and other boundaries to achieve a peaceful harmony in the global society. HWPL is committed to bringing world peace and cessation of war through peaceful dialogue between religious groups. I am Director Shin-Suk Kim of the HWPL Chicago branch of North America. Join us for our next gathering. Call 773-580-1501 and be a part of the movement for world peace. Email us at chicagohwpl@gmail.com.
Oh man, God sent the monthly sun bill today. This sunlight is really expensive, especially during this season. I'll probably have to work overtime to pay it.
Well, you better pay it on time. We don't want the sun to go out and we're sitting up here all day in the dark. Wouldn't it be terrible if God charged us for sunlight? Well, thank God, the light and heat from the sun is free. So why are we paying such high bills for the energy we use in our homes? Because we don't know how to use solar energy, the free energy from the sun. You can convert your regular home to a solar energy home and save tremendously on your electric bill. Take a look at your electric bill. Wouldn't you like to reduce or possibly even eliminate that cost altogether? Let one of our solar consultants show you how. Call today, 312-849-3456, and schedule a free consultation. That's 312-849-3456.
And we are back. You're listening to and watching the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif, along with our co-host, Kareem Hamid, and our American Muslim 360 family. And our guest today is Zoe Ma, a businesswoman, a property owner, and one with a unique perspective as an immigrant and one who has observed the solution of the housing problem in China. So perhaps we can learn from this experience and incorporate this solution in ways that would help to resolve this growing crisis, made even worse exponentially by the sudden influx of migrants from Venezuela, a warm climate, and here in Chicago, where city officials are trying to think of everything from forming tent cities to currently now they're being housed in police stations. But it's about to get into the cold of winter. Matter of fact, the temperatures are freezing today.
Yes.
And we have an existing crisis with the homeless that have been living outdoors for years. And so city residents are angry, they're frustrated, and somebody has to come up with a solution, and the politicians don't seem to be able to do it. So we're here to help. So, Kareem, you had a comment or question or observation on some of the things that Zoe suggested?
Yes, the formula that Zoe is suggesting has been tried here in this country. There were whole towns that was owned by an employer. They were called company towns.
I think I remember
The
that.
company built housing. Yes, the company built housing for the employees, and part of their salary would cover the rent for that housing. We need to look back at that history. We need to look back at that and see what was the pluses, the negatives, and how that idea can be moved forward. I have to admit that there have been some negative situations coming from out of the employer owning the residents of the employees. The rents were raised with no consultation. Not only are you under the threat of being fired, you're under the threat of being sat out on the street. That's a lot of leverage for an employer. That's a lot of leverage there. But I think if we take a careful look at it and put processes in place that protect both entities, the employer and the employee. I look back on that period. Andrew Carnegie owned an area called Homestead. Homestead was a steel foundry. And I advise us to look at what took place in Homestead and see how we can correct the flaws that was in that. A lot of employers at that time, they built housing around their factories, their places of employment to provide housing for the employees. But that's another idea to look at. But we want to put safeguards there so that no one is used and abused with that contract. That's one opportunity that offers to us to look at concerning massive unemployment and homelessness. But it would require that whoever the employer is, he has to have deep pockets, so he has to have deep pockets to provide facilities like that. China, I heard a report on China yesterday, and China is rivaling the United States for influence. I can remember my mother saying to us as we was eating our meals, eat all of your food because people in China are starving. And I remember that.
Yeah, I think I remember that too.
But we look back, but we look at the present. China is a very educated population.
Absolutely.
They are somewhat leading in the field of artificial intelligence technology. It's one thing that I can't remember the leader's name, but he opened up education to all the citizens of China. He did. There was an all-out push for education. The emphasis was on education. And they are a very educated population. The strength of a nation is the strength of the intellect of the people themselves. And so we need to look at what transpired in China. All of it is not beautiful. All of it is not beautiful, but it do warrant a look at how did they transform that huge country, very huge country, with a huge population. And they are in the position now of rivaling China's influence on the world. We need to look at how were they able to do that? China is a success story. We're not hearing eat your food because people in China are starving.
That's right.
China, they used a two-pronged approach. It was government ownership and also private capitalism. They melded those two together. I believe China felt a responsibility to provide for the common welfare of its citizens.
Yes.
The common welfare of its citizens.
And
they
that's
took
what,
that responsibility
yes,
for themselves.
That's what makes a difference.
Clothing and shelter.
Yes.
And education. The United States, we are behind in relationship to the well-being of our citizens.
Right.
So there needs to be less financing of swords and tanks and guns, and more investment in the people and the welfare of the people. I think that is how we can address these social issues. The government does have a responsibility and a social contract between the government. You know, the decisions that they make, they have to consider how will this affect the citizens of our country. So that partnership between government and private enterprise, I believe Zoe is really making the connection on that. How this problem can be addressed, the partnership between government and private enterprise. That's broad, but it is a very important ingredient that we're missing in this country.
Absolutely.
So I'll stop right there. Excellent a guest that you have, and she has a background and a history that she has shared with us. It sounds like a success story. So if she would share further with us some of her ideas, we would greatly appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you, Zoe. And
yes.
May you have a wonderful morning.
Yes, definitely. This is such an opportunity for us to learn from the successes of another country. But also, like you mentioned, Kareem, is that when we did that, sometimes there were abuses, and it can be very intimidating if the person that you work for also controls where you live. And if they request you to do something, or if there's a conflict on the job, then you're threatened not only with firing, but with eviction from your home. So how do you prevent people from being abused in that manner? And also, like Zoe pointed out, there's some major liabilities that a property owner is taking on by housing somebody. Who's going to be responsible if they destroy property, if they destroy lives? How do you avoid, lawsuits, all kinds of things, even though if you start out homeless, you really don't have the means to sue, because if you did that, you wouldn't be homeless. But at the same time, you still, as a property owner, you are taking on the liability every time somebody enters your apartment and enters a place where you live. So we have to find a way to have as the incentive the safety and security and care of people who are now currently homeless. That has to be the reason for this, so that we can look at what are the needs of the people. Because like you just pointed out, Kareem, one of the reasons why America is so behind is that we didn't take care of the people. And so when you don't care for the people, they can't be educated. If they can't be educated, they can't be skilled. If they can't be skilled, then they can't work in the industries that produce what the nation needs for its survival. So then as a nation, we become poorer and more dependent, and more using the crime industry as a means to generate income. So you turn people into criminals, and then you make the criminal justice system the biggest business that you have, because you have neglected your education and your training and the well-being of the citizens. This model isn't working. That's why America is at the head of crime and punishment in the world. This model doesn't work. So we have to realize it's not going to work. We can't keep trying to work it. We got to try something else.
I want to, can I put my a few thoughts here?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there are two things that I want to point out. Number one, housing should be a basic human right. If you don't have a house that you have to worry about every day where you're going to sleep, that will add to the mental health problem. To handle that stress, you may have to go to the alcohol addiction. So it's a vicious cycle that only when you are too drunk to realize you are under the distress of not have housing. There's no security of being, just know where you're going to sleep, that, and then be safe. So housing contribute to the mental health issue that include, and then the way that cause the alcohol addiction. I mean, alcohol addiction are many things, but I think the number one issue is that we have to, as a society, we have to consider housing is basic human right. We are not animals. We are human beings. We deserve to live in a place with a roof over our head, than not to be attacked by somebody else, like outside. So that, I think, so how to enforce housing as a basic human right is going to be a collaboration of a state and enterprise, because this country, I'm a sociology. I came to this country 30 years ago to go to graduate school to study sociology, because I try to understand how the social society works. And for the past 30 years, I've been comparing the China solution and the American solution, and see which one works better for the humanity. And then I think number one, China have done right is housing is a basic human right. And that's why you go to China, you do not see homeless people. You can go anywhere in China. You can go to a big city, because there's many like YouTubers in China try to find. They want to show, okay, where's the homeless? Because China has the number one policy to make sure every individual Chinese have a right to housing. Number two, about education. I think we are in the mindset that people have to be highly educated to be an upright citizen. I want to tell you a story of my client who I just went to Florida to visit them 2 weeks ago in Florida. This couple is about my age, just a tiny bit younger, like 2 years younger. They are originally from the peasant class in China. When they grow up, they were extremely poor because they were farmers. They have a different life path than me, who grew up in the city, was born and grew up in the city as big as Chicago. And then, so I advanced my life through education. You know, I got by God's grace, I got into the college prep school, only one, and then got to college. At that time, only 10% of high school graduates was able to go to college. And, you know, I come to United States because I have this college education, so I can get to middle class instantly after, you know, graduate school. But in China, I was already a middle class. At that time, the middle class is 1% of the population. So these people was like bottom 99% back 30 years ago. Today, they spent $500,000 in cash, bought American residency. With a barely high school education, they were high school dropouts, both of them. How did they get to where? How could they get to where they are? They are like by American standard, is upper middle class. They spent $500,000 cash by the American residency. They also own probably $300,000 home in Florida, and they are going to spend another $500,000 to buy another home. So you see, they have a lot of cash. They are quite successful. How did China? You know, at this point, there's a 400 million middle-class Chinese. Just in they actually, China manufactured 400 million middle-class Chinese in the last 30 years, a bigger population than the whole United States. How did China did that? Those people most of them did not have college education. Most of them are high school dropouts. What did they do? They are private business owners. They were in commerce. You know, they were selling everything. You know, now, you know, they were, I think the last thing they were selling was like fishing equipment for middle class. So China get people out of poverty, not by employers, by building these people as individual, you know, sole proprietors. Okay?
That makes sense. Because yes, yes, go ahead.
I want a comparative study between China and the United States. Our credit rate, our debt ratio in this country is very high. Most people don't say that their savings is either non-existent or minimal, and that harms the whole country together. But most of us live our lives on credit. Even the educational system.
Right.
You must take out a loan with the government. And after you have obtained your degree, you have saddled with a heavy debt.
Yes.
And so most of your income is going back into the system. And you can't move forward. We have a mindset in this country. We have a consumerism mindset, a consumerism mindset. I know in China, commercialism is there. Yes, it's there. They are aware of Fubu, Nike, Fenty, all of these brand names, but there's not so much pressure on the people of China to spend their money on these things that are promoted to the population. There is a cultural ingredient that they have, and that is saving and sharing with the family. Saving. Most of us live right on the edge of debt.
Yes.
Saddled with debt. So we have to change our mind and put our focus on improving the life of human beings in this country. And as I say, it requires a shift in our mindset at the governing level and at the private ownership level. Yes. China has built very modern speed rail across their country.
Yes, I've seen it.
They have revamped their ports and infrastructure. They have a state-of-the-art infrastructure. They are looking to the future. So that partnership between government and finance is very important. We have this homelessness because our focus has not been on the condition of the citizens.
That's right.
This housing bubble that blew up, the housing market blew up. Worthless paper was issued concerning credit on housing. A lot of people lost their homes when that bubble burst, and there has not been a repair mechanism for those that was caught up in that. As I said, some people are homeless not through fault of their own. This is something that happened to them.
Yeah, like
but
you
it's
said,
going to require.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you were saying, the debt
require a mindset.
Yes.
Yes, it's quickly enough.
Yes, and then you miss one payment, and or something happens and you lose a job because you had no savings. There was no safety net. You can't pay your rent. Next thing you know, you're being evicted because the whole lifestyle, the whole debt lifestyle. And I can see that this model isn't working. It's not working for us. So we have to change our minds. And then, as Zoe pointing out, the entrepreneurship that's encouraged. If people are constantly thinking of ways that they can serve, they can create an answer to a need. There are so many different gadgets and inventions coming out of China because people are now free to be creative. They are now being able to solve problems throughout the world with their inventions. And we're going to hear more about that because people are creating things because they've been free from that kind of burden of debt and the disorientation of homelessness. So this is what happens when you empower your citizens. They can create solutions, they can create products, they can create commerce. That's what China has been able to do as a result of solving this homeless crisis. So we got to take our last break. And when we come back, we're going to again go over these 15 items and, of course, look at our next step, which will be to then implement this with those who are willing to participate and even approach our elected officials to determine which official, and we'll present it to all of our aldermen here in the city, which official is willing to present this and work on this as something that the government can support by some of the measures that Kareem mentioned, such as the forgiveness of the tax debt while a building owner is participating in this cooperative housing agreement. So we'll be right back after this last break. And we invite you to stick and stay. Don't stray away. And if you are listening online and want to join this conversation, give us a call, 515-605-9325 or 515-605-9891, and press 1 so the host can open your mic. And if you're on our switchboard and want to see this document, we're going to go over it after the break. You can go to the Female Solution on Facebook or the Female Solution on YouTube, and it's here on the screen. We'll go over it after the break and continue this discussion when we return.
Yes, Naima?
Yes.
We have a caller on the line after this break. Let's open up their mic and hear what they can contribute to this very important subject matter.
All right. Caller, will take you right after break, so stay with us.
Tune in to Soulful Solutions with Dr. Debbie Green on Thursdays at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time and 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear great topics and stories on grief and turn it into victory. Join Dr. Debbie Green to listen to stories of triumph and learn how to overcome. You are not alone in your life, and there is hope in the darkest hour. This is your time to learn strategies and solutions to improve your life. It's your time. So join Dr. Debbie Green with Soulful Solutions and call in on Thursday at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time and 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at 515-605-9325 with comments and questions. Look to hear from you real soon.
Hey, it's time to take charge of your health. I'm Beata, your holistic life coach, and every Friday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I'm here on the Female Solution to empower you to make choices that will assist your evolution to abundant health. I'm also blogging every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at Soul Purpose Healing, where I bring you a spiritual chiropractic adjustment to bring you back into alignment with our Creator's love, compassion, and wisdom. Join me every Friday morning at 8 a.m. and Sunday evening at 8 p.m. for a time of unity, enlightenment, and love vibration. Shalom.
Are you constantly arguing with your spouse? Are your children misbehaving and acting out? Someone in your family abusing drugs? Have you been the victim of domestic violence? Are you grieving over the loss of a loved one? Let us help you restore serenity to your life. At Serenity Family Social Services, we understand that good mental health is the result of emotional well-being. Our goal is to assist you and your family in removing emotional distress and restoring harmony and balance to your lives. We are individual, couples, and family counseling. I'm Howard Williams, CEO of Serenity Family Social Services. Call us today at 312-315-4820. That's 312-315-4820.
Having sound issues here. All right, we are back. You're listening to and watching the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif, along with our co-host Kareem Hamid, and our guest today is Zoe Ma, a businesswoman from China and property owner who has an insight on how we may solve this housing crisis. We've introduced a possible solution, and the cooperative housing agreement that we propose is an agreement between those who are currently homeless, and this includes everybody. This has to be open to everybody, be they longtime homeless person who's already a citizen here in America, as well as those who have been suddenly thrust upon the cities of America and may not speak the dominant language of English, but certainly as a human being have a human right to housing. This has to be the attitude that we bring. And so we're going to take callers. And before we take that caller, I just want to share some of the comments from our Facebook family. We've got, well, our Monday Morning Mindfulness host, and also you need to go to her website, higherlearningnetwork.org, where she works in bringing comfort and help to the homeless. She says, Grand Rising Wisdom Teachers, thank you for bringing this issue to the public. Sounds like America needs to replicate China's approach to homelessness. Right to housing is definitely a human right. And Viata, our Friday host, says, Grand Rising, beautiful queens. This is a valuable information that could transform a generation. And she asked the question, why do many political figures see China as a major threat to the USA? That's another attitude that has to change. We're one world, one earth. Nobody's a threat to anybody. We can all learn from each other if we would just see ourselves as one unit. And I think they fear China because China has employed things that has empowered the people, and therefore they're becoming a very strong economic world power. That's why there's fear. So Kareem, let's take a caller on the line there.
Okay. Area code 779-770. Welcome to the Female Solution. Please state your name and where you're calling from, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the name. What was it again? Hassan Kamal. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Go right ahead with your question or comment.
My comment is this. America, the biggest problem is America has a twisted concept about humanity. They have the citizens for the homeless and everybody else. But they have to have a criminal record. You can go to jail right now. All those places. All the food, shelter. But they have to have a criminal record. Because the jails are number one institute. Homeless people. Jail time, juvenile. But you have to have a criminal record. They're doing it. But their employment, their employment places, they support all that. With the money, with the food, but that's not a criminal record. They did that place in store for that. They got to go to jail to do it. That's crazy. It's just to destroy your life to get those things. It's crazy because you have to have a twisted mindset. They get rid of twisted mindset. You got to get those things in place right now. You got to go to jail to do it. That's crazy. Anyway, that's not coming. That's coming like that.
Alaikum salam. We appreciate your comment. You know,
they have criminalized homeless.
Yes, and
they have criminalized.
And not only have they criminalized it, but they've also put many homeless people in a situation where the jail has become a homeless shelter, and there are people who, rather than be on the streets in this cold weather, you know, they may even purposely commit some little petty theft or crime so they can be taken to jail so they can have a place to stay. So it really is outrageous. They've criminalized homelessness, and then they've made it so that you don't have any place to go but jail, other than freeze to death in weather that's about to be way too cold to be outside. Even if you're in a tent, it's inhuman. And like Zoe said, housing needs to be a human right. We need to follow China's example. So I want to, for those who just joined us, want to quickly go through these 15 conditions. This cooperative.
Can I add for this document?
Yes.
On the first paragraph, I would suggest, okay, I'm not a lawyer, first of all, But as a proper owner, and I have a lot of, fairly above average knowledge of the law than, as far as a lay person goes.
Right.
I think on the first paragraph,
yes,
we need to put a language that this agreement does not create a contract, a right. It's a right as a tenant and landlord relationship. It's only a license of a stay, a temporary stay, while meeting, complying to such agreement. So this way, probably, maybe I'm not a lawyer. I think we definitely need a lawyer to review this agreement to make sure that in case a tenant violates such agreement, that there's no legal recourse for the tenant to occupy the property that harming the interest of landlord, a property owner. So definitely I will add that. This agreement does not constitute a contract rights as a landlord and tenant. Then they have to agree that. So maybe that one will help the landlord to avoid litigation in case there's dispute between the tenant and the resident. You will never use the words tenant. It just was a residence and property owner. There's no tenant and landlord relationship. They shouldn't be, so they cannot go to some legal clinic, tenant rights legal clinic, say, oh, I'm a tenant here, so just bring a lawsuit for me, because there's a free legal rights for tenants, and the landlord does not have that resources.
Okay, so I think the wording you said was, this agreement does not constitute contractual rights as under a landlord-tenant agreement, but merely allows for the temporary shelter of the unhoused, something like that.
Yeah, it's just a license to stay, a license to stay. Just like a permission, allow that person to stay while in compliance in this agreement. So they can only allow to stay when they are meeting the requirement of this agreement.
Oh, okay. So that removes.
Wouldn't that be fine? Excuse me, go.
I'm sorry. What was the question? What was the question?
Yes, wouldn't the proper wording in order to avoid tenant identification that is utilized now? It's called an occupancy permit. An occupancy permit. The permit is housed in the contract that you are proposing. You must meet these requirements to continue to occupy that dwelling or that space.
I don't know if I want to use the words occupy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to use the words occupy.
Well, so number one, it says, I shall occupy apartment number so-and-so. So is there another word?
Just stay. I can stay in this. Just a stay. Occupy probably give a right, legal rights of occupy. Like a hotel. You can't occupy a hotel, but you only stayed in a hotel for days that you agree, like 3 nights, 2 nights. It's a stay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like in the real estate term, it's a license. So just like easement. Easement is like a license, give you a certain right, but you don't have a right as ownership. So occupy may give you a sense of ownership.
Yeah. So we want to say stay rather than occupy.
Yeah.
You know, there's an important part in the American construct, and that is the right to own property. To own property.
Yes.
That is another right that this country offers. So you don't want to devalue the right to own property and how your property is maintained, how it is utilized. So that's a very we can't just force this on people that own property.
Well,
we cannot force this. They have the right to own property.
Well, no, she's talking about. Well, she's talking about language that makes it clear that the person who is in the apartment is not a tenant with legal tenant rights. They're more like a person who is either staying temporarily at a hotel. Like a hotel or a shelter. So they don't have regular tenant rights. So they can't sue. You know, they can't demand court proceedings before eviction. You know, it's got to be clear that they can't create a disturbance, and then the building owner has all of these legal steps they have to take to get them out, because this is a very big risk that a building owner is taking, having someone occupy their premises who isn't paying any rent and isn't really responsible other than their agreement that this states. So the agreement has to protect the property owner as well as provide what the person staying in the apartment needs, which is the stability of an address while they're getting themselves together. It's the same thing that a shelter provides, except the shelters aren't really safe because you don't really have your own place that, you know, all your, you know, fixtures and everything. And then they can actually ask you to leave at a certain time, whereas this would not be that level of regimentation, but at the same time, it's got to protect the building owner that's agreeing to this. And there are a lot of things to consider. And I know we're running out of time. I believe we're going to do a part 2 on this. And I think next week, we'll see if we can have some lawyers, as well as I want to invite some people who've had the experience of being in a shelter, and or even had the experience of having cooperative living, and continue to hash this out, and even add some of the things that have been suggested today, so that we can actually present a workable solution to this crisis to our elected officials and to the business community that may be willing to do, as Zoe suggested, either finance it with their financial contributions, or be directly responsible to the building owner. But either way, you know, we need to hash this out so that we actually present a solution that could work, and then begin to implement it. Because we gotta come up with something real quick before these freezing temperatures hit, and putting tents out and vacant lots, that's not going to cut it. Not in Chicago in 20-degree weather. It's just not. So that is one of the things that we're suggesting. So now this part here, and maybe well, Zoe, maybe you have a thought on this as well. Number 6 on here that says, I shall consume no alcoholic beverage or indulge in any mind-altering or illegal substances while on the premises.
You know what? I don't think that's that is. What if I just want to have a beer?
Yeah. Well, okay. That's
you know,
a thought.
I just want to have a beer. If I have addiction, you know, it's as long as I'm not causing a problem, and you shouldn't penalize anybody right to have a glass of wine, a beer. So I think that might be too restrictive.
Okay, so then how do you make people responsible for their behavior if and again, we want to treat people like human beings, but at the
Well,
same time realizing that people are taking a big risk, and a lot of times people are homeless because they got addiction or
well,
alcohol.
if they're like, if they, maybe excessive drinking, you use the word excessive to the point that cause this disturbance or destruction of the property, that will be as a ground for terminate this license to stay.
Okay, so then let's see here. And of course, this one here, I shall harbor no firearms on the premises or use any items as a weapon, nor shall I engage in any acts of aggression or threat or of bodily harm to any resident or any individual on the premises. Now, Kareem pointed out that there are people who might have firearm carry permits, that kind of thing. But my thought is, just like you have on stores, they say no guns, no weapons,
Yeah.
you can't have it.
Not in this one. So if they want to have a gun, they go someone else. I think here the owner has a right to set the limit. If the people think they need a gun to solve a dispute, they would move somewhere else.
Because somewhere else if you don't feel safe enough for you. And you mentioned that they maybe need to be paid security, but again, yeah, you'd have to that'd be have to be one of the things that the business community finance. There has to be a way that it doesn't end up being turned into a prison type environment, but there still has to be security, because that's one of the issues with shelters. There really isn't security, and if another resident, another occupant, another person staying there violates you, then how do you protect yourself? So
I think that's why I feel this agreement should be between the city, the public, the private business, which will provide the security on for the premises, and the landlord, the property owners, and homeless individuals. So it's like a full party, because somebody need to provide security and that expense, And it's also, you're talking about somebody living there, and who's pay for all the utilities. If that individual can't afford to pay utilities, or if that person is willing to pay, what if that person do not pay?
So would utility companies be willing to be a part of this agreement so that the person has electricity and gas? Well,
Who's paying for it?
Is it possible that the utility companies could then receive some type of subsidy? Well, we're almost out of time. What we're going to do, we're going to come back next week and continue to hash this out, and perhaps have people who will be affected by this, the property owners, the people who perhaps will have lawmakers and lawyers to continue this process, because by December we need to have something and somewhere where people can go, because they're not going to be able to survive on the street. There's a whole lot of deaths that happen every year. So I know we're about to our time is up, and we got 1 minute left. Kareem, do you think we can come back next week and do part 2?
Yes, I'm definitely. This is a very critical issue that we must address.
Absolutely.
Human lives are on the line.
Absolutely. So our goal is to have this in place by December 1st. I think that's when the winter time is really
very lofty goal.
Yes. All right. Well, let's make it happen. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Zoe. We look at having you back next week, because we're going to hash this out and see if we can actually make a solution that the people can come together and make work. So we'll be back, and we invite you all to join us back. And of course, if you're listening online, we certainly invite you to come on back with us and be a part of the solution.
Yes. Great show.
Yes.
We've come to the end of our show today, but you can hear every show in the archive at www.blogtalkradio.com/the-female-solution. You can also hear today's show on the Female Solution Facebook page. Go to www.facebook.com/the-female-solution. Leave your comments about today's show. You can always reach me on my website at www.naimalatif.com. That's www.naimalatif.com. Watch our TV shows, listen to our radio shows, order our books, and be sure to get your copy of the book, The Female Solution. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to thank all of you who participated in today's discussion. And to our global family listening from all around the world, we say thank you. To our family in China, Sheshe, India, Zanyaba, Japan, Arigato, Korea, Kamsamnida, Russia, Spasiba, Germany, Danke, Poland, Jeonkujeon, France, Merci, Spain, Gracias, Italy, Grazie, Egypt, Shukran, Ghana, Medasi, Nigeria, Eshe, South Africa, Gabonga, Senegal, Geret, Kenya, Asante, Israel, Toda, Pakistan, Shukriya, Afghanistan, Tashakur, Saudi Arabia, Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you. And may peace be upon you and the mercy of God and God's blessing.